I'm standing in my Seattle penthouse watching my husband Ethan die on the polished marble floor. And all I can think about is how this poison was meant for me. His body is convulsing violently, muscles contracting in ways that shouldn't be possible. White foam bubbles from his mouth like some rabid animal fighting for its last breath. His eyes are locked on mine, wide with terror and confusion, but I can see the light slowly fading from them. He's trying to speak, but only wet, choking sounds escape his throat. This is all wrong. So completely wrong. 45 minutes ago, we were sitting at our dining table celebrating our 3rd wedding anniversary. Ethan had prepared lobster bisque, the same dish we shared on our very first date at that overpriced restaurant in downtown Seattle. He was being extra romantic tonight, telling me how proud he was of my success and how lucky he felt to be married to such an accomplished woman. But I saw what he did. When Ethan thought I was admiring the city lights through our floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched him retrieve a small glass vial from his jacket pocket. He poured something colorless and odorless into my bowl of bisque. It looked exactly like water, but I knew it wasn't. My heart started hammering against my ribcage so hard I thought it might burst right through my chest. Ethan had been acting strange for months now, always asking detailed questions about my business accounts, my life insurance policies, and who would inherit my co-working spaces if something tragic happened to me. I own 5 premium co-working locations across the country. 2 in Seattle, 1 in San Francisco, 1 in Austin, and my flagship space in Manhattan. Together, they're worth $25 million. But seeing him add something to my food made every suspicious moment click into place like pieces of a horrifying puzzle. When his phone buzzed with a text message, Ethan jumped up from the table nervously. "Sorry, darling. Work emergency. Give me just 2 minutes," he said, walking quickly into our living room to take what sounded like a hushed conversation. That's when I made my move. I switched our bowls as fast as my trembling hands would allow, placing his poisoned bisque in front of my chair and my clean bowl where his had been. Then I sat back down and tried to look normal, even though every nerve in my body felt like it was on fire with fear and adrenaline. Ethan returned a few minutes later with that same loving smile plastered across his face. Crisis averted. You know how demanding the consulting business can be. We both began eating our anniversary dinner. Ethan chatted about his day, asked about my meetings in downtown Seattle, played the role of the perfect, supportive husband, but I could barely taste anything. I kept watching his face intently, waiting for something to happen. And then it did. About 30 minutes after we finished eating, Ethan suddenly stopped mid-sentence. He had been telling me some boring story about a difficult client, and then his words just stopped. His face drained of all color, turning an unnatural shade of gray. "I don't feel right," he whispered, clutching his stomach with both hands. Then the sweating started. Large beads of perspiration rolled down his forehead even though our penthouse was perfectly climate-controlled. He attempted to stand up from his chair, but his legs buckled and he crashed hard onto the kitchen floor. That's when the violent shaking began. Now I'm watching my husband of 3 years die from whatever poison he put in my bisque. The same poison that should have killed me instead. I should call 911 immediately, but I can't seem to move. I can't even breathe properly. My whole body feels frozen in this surreal moment. Ethan's phone is buzzing incessantly on the marble counter. I can see the screen clearly from where I'm standing. It's a text message from someone named Isabella that reads, "Is it finally done? Call me the moment she's gone and we can celebrate." Isabella Torres. My biggest business rival and the woman who's been trying to buy out my co-working spaces for the past 2 years. My own husband and my competitor wanted me dead. What would you do if you discovered your spouse and business rival had been plotting your murder? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for the next part where we'll uncover exactly how long this deadly conspiracy has been brewing. 6 weeks ago, everything in my world seemed absolutely perfect. At least that's what I believed. I was sitting in my corner office on the 32nd floor of the Columbia Center in Seattle, gazing out at Elliott Bay and feeling like I controlled my own destiny. And in many ways, I actually did. My co-working empire was thriving beyond my wildest entrepreneurial dreams. Young Spaces Seattle Central was booked solid for the next 8 months with tech startups and freelancers. My San Francisco location in Soma was generating more revenue than I'd projected for the entire first year. Even my newest venture in Austin's downtown district was already operating in the black. I had built this business empire from absolutely nothing. Started with a small business loan and an ambitious vision when I was just 26 years old. Now at 32, I was worth over $25 million. Ethan seemed genuinely proud of my accomplishments back then. He would boast to his consulting colleagues about his successful wife at networking events in Bellevue and downtown Seattle. "My Maria is going to revolutionize the way people work," he would announce at dinner parties in our Belltown neighborhood. "I'm just fortunate she chose to build a life with me." But looking back now with perfect hindsight, I can pinpoint exactly when things began to shift. It started with seemingly innocent questions that felt perfectly normal at the time. Ethan would ask me about my business banking arrangements while we shared morning coffee on our balcony. "Honey, which institution handles your company's primary accounts?" he would say casually, sipping his Ethiopian blend like it was just ordinary conversation. Or he would bring up my life insurance coverage while we were watching Netflix in our living room. "Maria, do you think our current policy amounts are adequate? What happens to young spaces if something unexpected happens to you?" I assumed he was just being a responsible, caring husband, planning for our future together, maybe even thinking about starting a family someday and wanting to ensure we had proper financial security. But then I started noticing other behavioral changes. Ethan began requesting detailed information about my daily schedule with unusual persistence. Where was I going? Who was I meeting with? What time should he expect me home? He claimed he just wanted to plan romantic dinners for us, but it felt increasingly like he was tracking my every movement with military precision. Isabella Torres started appearing in my life more frequently around this same time. She would show up at business networking events where she knew I'd be present, always approaching me with that fake smile and talking about potential collaboration opportunities. Isabella had always been my primary competitor in the Seattle co-working market. She owned 4 locations that directly competed with mine, and she'd been making aggressive offers to buy me out since I opened my first space. But I thought her interest was purely professional rivalry. When I started my company, Isabella made several snide comments at industry conferences about how I was playing in the big leagues and trying to expand too fast without proper experience. But I assumed she had moved past that competitive resentment. She was 34 years old, supposedly mature enough to respect another woman's success in our male-dominated industry. I was completely wrong. One evening, I returned home early from a cancelled meeting with potential investors and found Ethan and Isabella sitting uncomfortably close together on our Italian leather sofa. They were speaking in hushed, conspiratorial tones, and when they noticed me entering, they immediately separated and shifted their body language. "Hey sweetheart," Ethan said, his voice sounding artificially cheerful and forced. "Isabella was just telling me about her expansion plans for next quarter." But Isabella looked guilty, like a child caught stealing candy from a store. And Ethan kept fidgeting with his wedding ring, something he only did when he was nervous or lying about something. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Ethan slept peacefully beside me. Something felt fundamentally wrong, but I couldn't identify exactly what it was. Ethan's breathing was normal and steady, but I kept replaying how strange they had both acted when I walked in. The following week, I decided to investigate our computer's browsing history. I told myself I was being paranoid and probably overreacting, but I needed to know what Ethan was researching online when I wasn't around. What I discovered made my blood turn ice cold in my veins. Ethan had been searching for phrases like undetectable poisons, how to make death appear natural, and life insurance payout after spouse death. He had also been researching detailed information about my business structure and the legal process for transferring ownership of my co-working spaces. I printed every single page of his search history and locked it in my office safe at the Columbia Center. I didn't know how to process this terrifying information. Part of me wanted to confront Ethan directly and demand an explanation, but another part of me was genuinely scared of what he might do if he realized I was suspicious of his activities. I started paying much closer attention to everything Ethan did around our penthouse. And that's when I noticed he had been going through my purse when I was in the shower, checking my phone when I left it charging in another room, and asking my business partner Cameron Brooks seemingly casual questions about my stress levels and general health. My perfect marriage was crumbling before my eyes, and I was just beginning to understand how truly dangerous my situation had become. Have you ever felt like someone you trusted was hiding something sinister from you? Share your story in the comments, and make sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next in this twisted tale of betrayal. For weeks after discovering those horrifying search results on our shared computer, my body started betraying me in ways I had never experienced in my entire life. It began with my digestive system. Every morning, I would wake up in our Belltown penthouse feeling like someone had twisted my intestines into impossible knots. The pain was so excruciating that I could barely stand upright or walk normally. I initially assumed it was just stress from managing multiple business locations, but the symptoms kept intensifying. Then came the relentless nausea. I couldn't keep food down, especially during the morning hours. Ethan would prepare elaborate breakfast spreads before I left for my office at the Columbia Center, and I would inevitably end up doubled over our marble bathroom sink, retching violently. He appeared so genuinely concerned, constantly asking if I needed to schedule an appointment with our family physician. "Maybe you're pushing yourself too hard, darling," he would say, rubbing my back while I was bent over the toilet. All those flights between Seattle, San Francisco, Austin, and New York are probably exhausting your system. But the most disturbing symptom was my hair loss. I started finding clumps of my thick black hair on my silk pillowcase every morning. Long strands would come out in my brush, in the shower drain, even when I just ran my fingers through it. I had always taken pride in my healthy, lustrous hair, and now it was falling out like I was undergoing chemotherapy. My business partner Cameron Brooks noticed the dramatic changes immediately. We were having lunch at our usual spot near Pike Place Market when he stopped eating his salmon and stared at me with genuine alarm. "Maria, you look terrible. When did you last see a doctor? You've lost at least 20 pounds in the past month." I glanced down at my hands and realized he was absolutely right. My wedding rings were sliding around loose on my finger. My designer clothes hung off my frame like they belonged to someone significantly larger. "I've just been feeling run down," I told him, but even I didn't believe my own explanation. Cameron insisted I make an appointment with Dr. Patricia Hoffman, our concierge physician in downtown Seattle. I scheduled a comprehensive examination for the following week, but deep in my gut, I was beginning to suspect that my illness wasn't natural or coincidental. That weekend, while Ethan was supposedly at his consulting firm's office in Bellevue, I decided to conduct a thorough search of our entire penthouse. I started with his home office, methodically going through every drawer, filing cabinet, and storage container. Most of it contained normal business documents, tax records, old photographs of us from happier times when our relationship felt genuine and loving. But then I discovered his workshop area in our building's private storage unit. Ethan had always enjoyed working with his hands, building furniture and fixing household items. But hidden behind his toolbox in a locked metal cabinet, I found something that made my heart literally stop beating for several seconds. 3 small glass vials containing clear, odorless liquid. They had no manufacturer labels or identifying markings, but they looked exactly like the substance I had seen him pour into my anniversary bisque. Next to the vials was a spiral notebook filled with my daily schedule written in Ethan's distinctive handwriting. He had been meticulously tracking when I left for work, when I returned home, what I ate for each meal, like I was some kind of laboratory experiment. I photographed everything with my phone and carefully replaced the items exactly where I had found them. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold my phone steady enough to focus the camera. That evening, Ethan prepared dinner as usual. Grilled halibut with quinoa and roasted vegetables. He served my plate first, smiling at me like the devoted husband he pretended to be. "Eat up, sweetheart. You need to rebuild your strength." I pushed the food around on my plate, pretending to eat while watching Ethan carefully. He seemed unusually anxious, checking his phone constantly and glancing at me to monitor whether I was actually consuming the meal. When he excused himself to use the bathroom, I quickly scraped most of my dinner into a napkin and concealed it in my purse to dispose of at work the next day. Later that night, I heard Ethan speaking quietly on his phone in our living room. I crept to the hallway and listened to his side of the conversation. "She's getting weaker much faster than we anticipated," he was saying in hushed tones. "Maybe we should adjust the timeline." A woman's voice was responding, but I couldn't make out her exact words through the phone speaker. It sounded like Isabella, but I couldn't be completely certain. "No, you're absolutely right," Ethan continued. "We need to stick to our original plan. Just a few more weeks and this will all be finished." I crawled back to our bedroom and pretended to be asleep when Ethan came upstairs 30 minutes later. But I lay awake the entire night, finally understanding the complete truth. My husband was systematically poisoning me to death, and my business rival was helping him execute the plan. Are you starting to see the signs that Maria missed initially? Drop a comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to like this video if you're as shocked as I was by this revelation. I couldn't endure the uncertainty any longer. I needed concrete proof of what Ethan and Isabella were doing to me. So I decided to install hidden surveillance cameras throughout our Belltown penthouse. The next morning, while Ethan was at his Bellevue consulting office, I drove to a specialty electronics store in Capitol Hill and purchased 4 tiny wireless cameras with smartphone connectivity. The sales associate demonstrated how to sync them with my phone so I could monitor everything remotely from my office at the Columbia Center. I positioned one camera in our kitchen, concealed behind a decorative ceramic bowl on the granite counter. Another went in Ethan's basement storage workshop, tucked between paint cans where he kept those mysterious vials. The third camera I installed in our living room, hidden behind a framed photograph on our built-in bookshelf. The fourth went in our bedroom, disguised within a potted plant on the windowsill. For 5 days, I watched mundane, ordinary footage of Ethan performing typical husband activities. Brewing morning coffee, watching television, working on his laptop at our dining table. I started questioning whether stress from managing co-working spaces in 4 major cities was making me genuinely paranoid. Maybe I was imagining threats that didn't actually exist. But on Friday afternoon, everything changed dramatically. I was in my office reviewing quarterly profit reports from my Austin location when my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the living room camera. I opened the surveillance app and saw Isabella sitting on our sofa with Ethan. They were positioned much closer than a business associate and married man should be sitting. I increased the volume on my phone and listened to their conversation with growing horror and rage. "How much longer do we have to continue this charade?" Isabella was saying, running her manicured fingers through her auburn hair. "I'm exhausted from pretending to tolerate Maria when I see her at industry events." Ethan took her hand and squeezed it intimately. "Just 3 more weeks, baby. The medical examiner said the thallium needs to accumulate slowly in her system or the death will look suspicious." Thallium. They were poisoning me with thallium, a toxic heavy metal that mimics autoimmune diseases. I had been ingesting it in small doses for months. "I've been adding it to her morning protein smoothies and dinner for almost 10 weeks now," Ethan continued matter-of-factly. "She's losing weight and getting progressively weaker every day. Soon it will appear like she died from work-related stress and autoimmune complications." Isabella leaned closer to Ethan and kissed him passionately on the lips. Not a friendly peck, but a deep, romantic kiss between 2 people who were clearly lovers. "I can't wait until we can be together openly," she whispered against his mouth. "Once Maria is gone, we'll merge our co-working companies and control the entire Seattle market. We can sell her locations and retire to my family's estate in Tuscany." My own business rival was planning to marry my husband after they murdered me for my company. Ethan pulled out his phone and showed Isabella something on the screen. "Look, I've been practicing Maria's signature on these ownership transfer documents. When she dies, you'll be listed as the primary beneficiary of Yang Spaces instead of me. That way, no one will suspect that I killed her for the business assets." "You're brilliant," Isabella said, kissing him again. Maria always acted like she was the smartest entrepreneur in the room, but she has absolutely no idea what's happening right under her nose. They spent another hour discussing their detailed plans. How they would make my death appear like cardiac arrest caused by work-related stress. How they would immediately merge our companies and eliminate competition. How they had been conducting their affair for over 18 months, meeting secretly while I was traveling for business. Isabella even revealed how jealous she had always been of my success in the co-working industry. Maria got everything handed to her, she said with bitter resentment. The prime locations, the media coverage, the industry recognition. Well, now it's my turn to have the perfect life and the perfect business empire. I recorded their entire conversation on my phone, my hands trembling with a mixture of anger, betrayal, and determination. These two people I had trusted most in my personal and professional life had been systematically killing me for months while planning their future together. But the most chilling part came at the end of their meeting. When should we administer the final dose? Isabella asked with the casual tone of someone discussing weekend plans instead of murder. Ethan considered this for a moment. Next Friday. Our third wedding anniversary. I'll put enough thallium in her anniversary dinner to kill her within 4 hours. Then I'll call 911 and perform the role of the devastated husband who discovered his wife dead from a stress-induced heart attack. And then we'll finally be free, Isabella said, smiling like she was planning a vacation rather than my execution. They kissed goodbye and Isabella left through our private elevator so building security wouldn't log her visit. I sat in my office on the 32nd floor of the Columbia Center, staring out at Elliott Bay, and realized I had exactly 7 days to figure out how to save my own life. My husband and business rival had been poisoning me for 10 weeks, and they were planning to finish the job on our wedding anniversary. But now I knew their complete plan, and I was going to make absolutely sure it backfired in the most devastating way possible. What do you think Maria should do with this information? Leave your suggestions in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on for the shocking conclusion to this story of ultimate betrayal and revenge. Friday night arrived faster than I wanted it to. I sat at our dining table in our Belltown penthouse, watching Ethan serve our anniversary dinner, knowing this was supposed to be my final meal on Earth. But Ethan had no idea that I knew everything about his conspiracy with Isabella. For the past 7 days, I had been pretending to consume the food he poisoned while secretly disposing of it at work. I felt stronger and healthier than I had in months. My hair had stopped falling out, my digestive issues had resolved, and I could think with perfect clarity again. Ethan seemed almost euphoric tonight, practically glowing with anticipation as he ladled the lobster bisque into our bowls. "I made your favorite," he said, beaming at me like he genuinely cared about my happiness. "You've been looking so exhausted and frail lately. I thought some comfort food might help restore your energy." I observed him carefully as he prepared our portions. When he assumed I wasn't paying attention, he retrieved a small glass vial from his jacket pocket. This time he poured significantly more of the clear liquid into my bowl than I had ever witnessed before. Enough thallium to kill me within 4 hours, exactly as he had promised Isabella. "I'll be right back," Ethan announced when his phone rang. "Business call, you know how it is." He walked into our living room and I could hear him speaking in low, excited tones. I knew he was probably informing Isabella that it was finished, that I would be dead before midnight. This was my opportunity for justice. My hands were trembling with adrenaline, but I quickly switched our bowls with practiced precision. The bowl containing enough thallium to kill me was now positioned in front of Ethan's chair. The clean bowl sat in front of mine. When Ethan returned to the dining room, he was practically radiating happiness. "Sorry about that interruption, darling. You understand how demanding client work can be." We both began eating our anniversary dinner. Ethan chatted enthusiastically about his day, asked about my meetings in downtown Seattle, performed his role as the perfect, loving husband, but I could see the anticipation in his eyes. He believed he was watching me consume my last meal. "This bisque is absolutely delicious," I said, taking another spoonful from the uncontaminated bowl. "You're such an incredible cook, Ethan." He glowed with pride and satisfaction. "Anything for my beautiful, successful wife." About 35 minutes after we finished eating, I was rinsing dishes in our kitchen sink when I heard Ethan make an unusual sound behind me. I turned around and saw his face had turned completely white, like all the blood had drained from his body. "I don't feel right," he whispered, gripping the edge of our marble counter for support. Then the profuse sweating began. Large droplets of perspiration rolled down his face despite our perfectly controlled penthouse temperature. His hands were visibly shaking as he attempted to stand up from his chair. "Ethan, what's wrong?" I asked, playing the role of the concerned wife perfectly. "Something's very wrong," he gasped, struggling to breathe. "I think I need to get to a hospital immediately." But before he could take a single step toward our door, his legs collapsed and he crashed onto our kitchen floor with a sickening thud. That's when the violent convulsions started. Ethan's entire body was shaking uncontrollably, muscles contracting and releasing in ways that looked impossibly painful. White foam bubbled from his mouth and his eyes were wide with absolute terror. He was trying desperately to speak, but only choking, gurgling sounds emerged from his throat. I stood there calmly watching my husband die from the poison he had intended for me, and I felt no sympathy whatsoever. This man had been systematically murdering me for 10 weeks while planning a future with my business rival. Ethan's phone was buzzing persistently on the counter. I picked it up and read a text message from Isabella. "Is it finally done? Call me the moment she's gone. I love you so much and can't wait to celebrate." My own business competitor was waiting eagerly to hear that I was dead. I scrolled through Ethan's phone and discovered another text message he had composed but not yet sent. "It's finished. She'll be gone by morning. Can't wait to start our new life together in Tuscany." He had also prepared what appeared to be a suicide note on his laptop, designed to make it look like I had killed myself due to overwhelming work pressure and business stress. Every detail of my murder had been planned meticulously, except for one critical element. Ethan never anticipated that I would discover his conspiracy and turn it against him. Now he was dying from his own poison while I remained completely unharmed. I called 911 with deliberately shaking hands, watching Ethan take his final, labored breaths on our marble floor. 911, "What's your emergency?" the operator asked. "My husband is dying," I said, injecting panic and hysteria into my voice. "I think he's been poisoned. Please send paramedics to 2100, 3rd Avenue, Penthouse Suite 3201. Is he conscious? Can you tell if he's breathing?" I looked down at Ethan. His body had stopped convulsing. His eyes were still open, but they were empty now, staring at nothing. "No, I think he's gone. Please hurry." The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, followed immediately by 2 Seattle Police Department officers. Detective Riley Washington was a tall, athletic woman with intelligent brown eyes who began questioning me while the paramedics confirmed that Ethan was deceased. "Mrs. Young, I'm Detective Washington with SPD. Can you walk me through what happened here tonight?" I had rehearsed this narrative in my mind repeatedly. We were having our anniversary dinner, just lobster bisque and champagne. About 40 minutes after we finished eating, Ethan said he felt sick. Then he collapsed and started shaking violently. I've never seen anything like it in my life. Detective Washington was documenting everything in her notebook meticulously. "Did your husband have any known health issues? Heart problems, allergies, anything that might explain this?" "No, he was in perfect health. He just had his annual physical examination last month and everything was completely normal." The detective surveyed our kitchen carefully, photographing everything and bagging our bowls, utensils, and the pot Ethan had used to prepare dinner. I have to ask this question, but were you and your husband experiencing any marital problems? Any arguments or disagreements recently?" This was the moment I had been dreading most. No, we were very happy together. Ethan was always so supportive of my business success. I owned several co-working spaces and he was genuinely proud of what I had accomplished. But Detective Washington was perceptive and experienced. I could see her studying my face intently, analyzing my expressions for signs of deception. "Mrs. Young, I'm going to need you to come to the precinct tomorrow for a more comprehensive interview. This appears to be a suspicious death, and we need to investigate every possibility thoroughly." After the police departed and Ethan's body was removed by the medical examiner, I sat alone in our penthouse for the first time, feeling genuinely frightened. What if they suspected that I had poisoned him? What if they didn't believe my story about being an innocent victim? But then I remembered all the evidence I had gathered, and I knew I had prepared for this scenario perfectly. Did Maria make the right choice, or should she have handled this differently? Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for the final part where justice is served in the most satisfying way possible. The next morning, I arrived at the Seattle Police Department precinct in downtown with my attorney, David Kuramoto, a sharp criminal defense lawyer I had retained for my business dealings. Detective Washington led us to a small, windowless interview room with gray walls and harsh fluorescent lighting. She asked me the same questions repeatedly for over 2 hours. Mrs. Young, your husband died from thallium poisoning. That's not something that happens accidentally. Someone deliberately added a toxic substance to his food. I maintained my confused, grief-stricken widow performance flawlessly. I don't understand how that's possible. Who would want to hurt Ethan? He was such a kind, gentle person. That's exactly what we're trying to determine. Did Ethan have any enemies? Anyone who might have wanted him dead? I shook my head convincingly. Everyone loved Ethan. He was helpful and generous with everyone he met. Then I pretended to have a sudden, terrible realization. Wait, there is something I should probably mention. I've been feeling very sick for the past several months. Severe digestive problems, hair loss, dramatic weight loss, extreme fatigue. My doctor couldn't identify what was causing these symptoms. Detective Washington leaned forward with intense interest. What exactly are you suggesting? What if someone was trying to poison me, and Ethan accidentally consumed the wrong food? What if I was the intended target? I could see the detective's analytical mind working through this possibility. Do you have any idea who might want to harm you? This was my crucial moment. I've been having some serious business conflicts with Isabella Torres. She's my primary competitor in the co-working industry, and she's been making aggressive attempts to buy me out for over 2 years. Recently, she's been showing up at industry events and making veiled threats about eliminating my competition. I pulled out my phone and showed Detective Washington some of the surveillance footage I had recorded. I installed security cameras in my penthouse because I was becoming suspicious about Isabella's relationship with my husband. I thought maybe they were having an affair, but this is much worse than I imagined. The detective watched the video of Ethan and Isabella planning my murder, her expression growing more shocked and disturbed with each passing minute. She saw them discussing the thallium poisoning, their 18-month affair, their plan to merge our businesses after my death, and their scheme to make my murder look like stress-related cardiac arrest. Mrs. Young, this changes everything completely. Your husband and Isabella Torres were conspiring to murder you for your business assets. I allowed real tears to flow down my face for the first time since this nightmare began. I can't believe my own husband wanted me dead. And Isabella. I thought she was just a business competitor, not a potential killer. Detective Washington stood up immediately. We need to locate Isabella Torres right now. Do you know where she might be? I provided them with Isabella's home address in Bellevue, her office location in downtown Seattle, and her phone number. Within 3 hours, they had arrested her at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. She was attempting to board a flight to Rome with a forged passport and $75,000 in cash that she had embezzled from her own company accounts. The truth was finally emerging, and justice was about to be served in the most satisfying way I could have imagined. Are you surprised by how perfectly Maria's plan worked out? Share your thoughts below, and make sure you hit that subscribe button for more incredible true crime stories like this one. 8 months later, I sat in the King County Superior Courthouse in downtown Seattle, watching Isabella Torres receive her sentence for conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree. The judge, an elderly man with silver hair and stern, weathered features, looked down at Isabella with visible disgust and contempt. Miss Torres, you have been found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, fraud, and embezzlement. You and the deceased Ethan Rodriguez planned and executed a calculated attempt to poison Maria Young for financial gain while conducting an extramarital affair. Isabella was wearing an Orange County jail jumpsuit and metal handcuffs. She looked nothing like the polished, confident businesswoman who used to compete with me at industry conferences. Her auburn hair was unkempt and greasy from months in jail. Her face was pale and gaunt from the stress of her legal proceedings. The evidence against you is overwhelming and disturbing, the judge continued sternly. Video recordings of you planning the victim's death, forged documents attempting to steal her business assets, embezzled funds from your own company, and your attempt to flee the country with a false identity. This court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Isabella finally looked directly at me for the first time during the entire trial. Her eyes were filled with pure hatred and resentment, not remorse or regret. Even now, facing life imprisonment, she was still angry that I had survived while she had been caught and exposed. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Kim, had presented an exceptional case to the jury. She showed them all the evidence I had meticulously gathered: the hidden camera footage, Ethan's internet search history about untraceable poisons, the forged business documents, and the thallium found in our penthouse storage unit. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she had said during her powerful closing argument, "this was not a crime of passion or temporary insanity. This was a calculated, premeditated murder conspiracy that lasted for months. The defendant systematically poisoned Maria Young while planning to steal her life's work and live luxuriously on the proceeds." Isabella's defense attorney tried desperately to argue that she was merely a victim of Ethan's manipulation, that she was just an innocent woman who got involved with the wrong man. But the jury saw through that fabrication immediately. The video evidence clearly demonstrated that Isabella was an equal partner in planning my execution. After the sentencing, I walked out of the courthouse into the bright Seattle sunshine feeling truly free for the first time in almost a year. My business partner Cameron Brooks was waiting for me on the courthouse steps with a supportive smile. "How does it feel?" he asked, giving me a congratulatory hug. "Like I can finally breathe again," I replied, and I meant every word. For the first time in months, I felt completely safe and secure. My health had returned to perfect condition once I stopped consuming Ethan's poisoned food. My hair grew back thicker and shinier than before. I regained all the weight I had lost, plus I felt stronger and more energetic than ever. Most importantly, I could sleep peacefully at night knowing that no one was actively trying to kill me. My business empire was performing better than ever before. Young Space's Seattle Central had a waiting list extending 18 months into the future. My San Francisco location had been featured in Entrepreneur magazine as one of the top innovative workspaces on the West Coast. My Austin location was expanding to include a tech incubator and startup accelerator program. I had even opened 2 new locations, one in Denver and another in Portland. But the most valuable lesson I learned was to trust my instincts completely. When something felt wrong or suspicious, I would never ignore those warning signs again. I had installed comprehensive security systems in all my properties and hired a personal protection specialist for business travel. 6 weeks after the trial concluded, I made one final visit to Isabella at the Washington Correction Center for Women. I needed closure, and I wanted to hear her attempt to explain why she had tried to murder her own business colleague and former friend. The correctional facility was a depressing complex of concrete buildings surrounded by razor wire and guard towers. Isabella looked even worse than she had during her sentencing hearing. Prison life was clearly destroying whatever remained of her former confidence and arrogance. "Why did you do it, Isabella?" I asked her through the thick reinforced glass that separated us in the visitation room. Isabella remained silent for several long minutes, staring down at her shackled hands. Then she finally spoke in a flat, emotionless voice. "You always had everything, Maria. The prime real estate locations, the media attention, the industry recognition, the perfect husband who supported your dreams. I was tired of being the second-place competitor who never got proper credit for my innovations. So you decided the solution was to kill me." "Ethan convinced me it would be simple and undetectable," she replied without any trace of remorse. "We could make it appear like you died from work-related stress, and no one would ever suspect foul play. I thought I deserved your success more than you did." I looked at this woman who had shared my professional world and social circles, and felt nothing but pity for her pathetic jealousy and moral corruption. "I forgive you, Isabella," I said calmly, "but I never want to see you again for the rest of my life." I walked out of that prison and drove back to my penthouse in Seattle, ready to build an even more successful future surrounded by people who genuinely supported my ambitions instead of secretly plotting my destruction. 3 months later, I was featured on the cover of Forbes magazine as one of the top 30 entrepreneurs under 35. The article detailed my recovery from the murder conspiracy and how I had turned my traumatic experience into motivation for unprecedented business expansion. Yang Spaces now operated in 12 major cities across the United States, with international locations planned for London, Toronto, and Tokyo. The attempted murder had actually generated enormous positive publicity for my brand. Business leaders and entrepreneurs reached out to express support and admiration for my resilience. Several venture capital firms offered significant investment opportunities that I carefully evaluated and selectively accepted. I also established the Yang Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting women entrepreneurs who had experienced domestic violence or workplace harassment. We provided legal assistance, business mentoring, and financial resources to help them rebuild their professional lives after traumatic experiences. But perhaps the most satisfying aspect of my new life was the romantic relationship I developed with Dr. Marcus Wellington, a brilliant cardiovascular surgeon I met at a medical conference where I was speaking about stress management for business leaders. Unlike Ethan, Marcus genuinely admired my independence and success. He encouraged my ambitions instead of secretly resenting them. 6 months after we started dating, Marcus proposed to me during a weekend trip to Vancouver. We were having dinner at a restaurant overlooking the harbor when he got down on one knee with a stunning emerald engagement ring. "Maria, you're the strongest, most inspiring woman I've ever met," he said with tears in his eyes. "Will you marry me and let me support your dreams for the rest of our lives?" I said yes without hesitation, knowing that this time I had found a partner who truly wanted to build a future together rather than destroy me for personal gain. Our wedding was a small, intimate ceremony on the beach in Maui with just our closest friends and family members present. Cameron Brooks was my maid of honor, and Marcus's brother served as his best man. As we exchanged vows overlooking the Pacific Ocean, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed since that terrible night when I watched Ethan die from his own poison. The attempted murder had actually made me stronger, more confident, and more successful than I had ever imagined possible. Sometimes the worst betrayals in life lead to the most incredible opportunities for growth and transformation. During our honeymoon in Tuscany, Marcus and I visited several co-working spaces in Florence and Rome, researching potential locations for Yang Spaces' European expansion. As we toured the beautiful historic buildings that could house my next ventures, I realized that Ethan and Isabella had actually done me an enormous favor by revealing their true characters before they could cause even more damage. Now I was married to a man who genuinely loved and supported me, running a business empire worth over $50 million, and helping other women overcome similar challenges through my foundation work. Justice had been served in the most poetic way possible, and I was living proof that sometimes the best revenge is simply living an incredibly successful life. What would you have done if you discovered your spouse and business rival were plotting to kill you? Would you have handled the situation the same way Maria did? Or would you have taken a different approach? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this incredible story of betrayal, survival, and ultimate triumph, make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss another shocking true crime story. I have so many more unbelievable tales to share with you about people who thought they could get away with the perfect crime, only to have their plans backfire in the most spectacular ways possible. Until next time, remember that sometimes the people closest to us are hiding the darkest secrets, and the only way to protect yourself is to trust your instincts and never ignore those warning signs that something isn't right. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video with another jaw-dropping story that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about human nature.